Okay, so top 5 glute bridge variations. I've meant to do this for probably a year. Here's the thing about glute bridges is we all need to do them. I don't care if you're a guy, girl, looking for fitness, strength, weight loss, any of that kind of stuff. I think we all should do basic glute bridges. And there are a zillion kinds and a zillion progressions and stuff like that. So I'm just going to give you my top 5. These are ones I use all the time. And I use them all the time from a function standpoint, for people with lower back pain, core dysfunction, maybe one glute is twice the size of the other one because you played soccer or something like that. That tends to happen. Maybe when you're squatting you only feel like you're shifting into one hip. There's all kinds of reasons to do glute bridges, and especially unilateral glute bridges. So I'm going to show you all my favorite types of glute bridges. But I'm going to show you some basics about glute bridges, because a lot of the times, I'll ask somebody, where do you feel that? And they'll be like, my quads. And I'll be like, that's not the right answer. So that means that your placement of your feet usually has to do with how you're going to feel it. And so the other thing I would say is that, maybe our hip sockets aren't perfectly even. And that has to get out of your head. So maybe your feet don't need to be perfectly even. And that was a really mind-blowing concept for me to understand, that maybe my feet don't have to be 100% exactly even to each other for my glutes to get the right kind of action. So, what I mean by that, if I go to do a glute bridge, okay, so let's just start with the basic 2-leg glute bridge. Now there are a few things that tend to be important about glute bridging, and the number one, of course, is the fact that I'm actually using my glutes to get up there. So here's a couple things I look for. If I go up and I see this, where somebody's stomach is sticking out, well, if I look at the opposite of that, if I take my t-shirt and I take that up, you're going to see an excessive curvature coming from my lumbar spine. So I'm not really using my glute per se to get up there. I'm kind of using my hamstring and excessively my lower back. So when I get down there, you're going to see a huge arch in somebody's back. So it never hurts to flatten or neutral the pelvis and the spine before performing a bridge. Now I have a straight body, so I have knee, hip, shoulder straight. I don't have this excessive lumbar option. So that's number one, is making sure it's not coming from your lower back. Second, maybe you feel too much hamstring, okay? So hamstring has to do with how far away your heels are. Now if I do this and I go straight up, I'm going to feel mostly hamstring. If I put my heels too close to my body, all I feel is the stretch in my quads, and I'm using kind of the mid of my hamstring. But there's a lot of joint stress around the knees, IT band, stuff like that. So, point being, figure out what placement, okay, and you can do that by walking around at the top, and you can poke around in the glute. Figure out where you feel like, okay, yep, that's it. That's where I'm getting the best glute action that feels even. Now the funny thing about that is that if I go down and I take a look at my feet are actually pretty even to each other. But sometimes, and a lot of times what I'll see something weird like this, where somebody's one foot sticks a little further out than the other one, and maybe turns in or out in relation to the other one. And being trainers, we tend to be a little OCD and a little anal about all this kind of stuff. We're like, no, it has to be perfect and match with the 5th house of Saturn, otherwise it's not going to work. And I think we're wrong about that. So I think what happens is, as long as I get up here, and I move around, and the glutes feel like they're squeezing evenly, same amount of power, same amount of extension, I don't have one side a lot higher than the other side, that kind of stuff. As long as this all feels even, who cares what's happening at your feet? Who cares? So I'm going to get up there, I'm going to squeeze. Okay. Now again, generally speaking, close tends to be inside hamstring. Medium tends to be kind of mid hamstring. Outside and wide tends to be a lot more glute, but it can also be a lot of hip socket stress. So again, fart around, figure out what actually feels like glutes, figure out what feels like it's not coming from your lower back, so a flat tummy. If you have to posture pelvic tuck, then do that, that's fine. So I'm going to bridge, up, squeeze. Here's the thing about glute bridges. You can do 1,000 of them. Okay, if I do glute bridges like this, like I'm having convulsions, I'm not going to get anything out of the exercise, I'm sorry. It might work in the bedroom, it ain't going to do shit for glute building, alright? You need to crush your glutes. There's not enough load in a glute bridge, generally speaking, unless you're doing one leg variations or some of the greater progressions like barbell hip thrust, dumbbell hip thrust, barbell glute bridges, stuff like that, there's not enough load on such a big muscle. Therefore, I'm not going to get a lot of size out of it. What you will get out of low load glute bridging on top of function fixes, the best thing you're going to get out of it is some increasing density to the glute. So you're going to get a hardening of the glute. Basically, it's if I learn to contract it extremely hard, that muscle will squeeze and crush and become more firm. If you want bigger, gigantic Nicki Minaj glutes, either get fat injections or just do barbell hip thrusts like a crazy person with a ton of weight. But this is body weight stuff. So you have to learn to make glute bridges worth something by crushing your damn glutes like you mean it. So here are my top 5 glute bridges. Again, once you figure out where your stance is, how not to use your lower back. Here's a frog glute bridge. I tend to do these in 5s, and this is important. This bridge I use for people that tend to have a tension in their hip flexors, so they feel pain in and around, especially in something that feels like this, okay? Or they feel pain in here. Maybe not on the outside, that's a little bit different. On the inside, if you feel hip flexor pain when you're squatting, so you get down like this and you feel a pinching, frog glute bridges work fantastic. So I'm going to put my feet together. Okay. Now again, what did I say? I want a flattening of my lower back. I want to figure out where in space that gives me the best glute action. Okay, it feels even. Okay, so I'm pretty good there. Keep the head down. I tend to lift my head too much when I do this. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 5 intentional glute bridges. Crush your glutes. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 5th one, I'm going to hold. And I'm actually going to try to pull my knees apart to get a stretching of my adductor groin area. Down. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 5th one again, hold. Open the knees apart while keeping your glutes engaged. I'm stretching the front while working the back. And I'll repeat that for about 20 total reps. So 4 of that 5 rep sequence. So 5 reps, hold the top of the 5th one. Okay, so 3, 4, 5. I hold, I open. You're gonna feel crazy stretching in here. Try to keep this up. Don't open and drop. Okay? So those are frog glute bridge 5s. That's what I like to call it. Now, hamstrings. You cannot get away from using your hamstrings in a glute bridge. Can't do it. Physically impossible. Good luck with that. But maybe we can emphasize the glute a little bit more. Okay, especially if you have overdeveloped hamstrings in relation to your glute size or glute strength, or even your mind muscle connection to your actual butt cheek muscle. So you can do this on the ground by all means. The height of the box just makes it harder. Again, don't go so high that you're using, like don't use a 24-inch box because you're just going to end up using your lower back. I think 12 inches works for most people. So what I'm going to do is what I call a double up glute bridge. And I'm going to do this single-legged, so you have to be fairly strong. Not to say that you can't do it two-legged, you absolutely can. Now, here's one other thing about glute bridges. Should my heels dig into stuff, or should my heels go against things, okay? So here's the risk of putting my feet against something. It slides away. That proves the point that you're not using your butt to begin with. That just means you're using your quads and your hamstrings. Because I should be able to take an object, put my feet against it, and squeeze on purpose, and that box doesn't move. Again, I've got flat, I haven't overextended my back. So I can squeeze. That's a glute bridge. Now, I like going on top, that's me. Some people feel their glutes more with their heels dug on top, some people against, but again, if you put it against and you're kicking it away, you're not doing it right. You're probably better to learn it up here. Now, one leg, double up glute bridges. That leg goes in the air. Double up. I go most of the way up, then I squeeze extra hard, back down, up, dead, up, dead, up. What goes wrong is this. People kicking this leg to get up. You don't want that. I'm trying to focus on the pocket, which is opposite of the glute that's working. So, up, then fully up, down, down, switch sides, up, okay? So that's a double up glute bridge. It's one of my favorites. You're always going to feel that. It is a lot of hamstring. You can't get away from that. Next, come over here. Now, while a one leg double up glute bridge is unilateral and you're going to get great work, maybe especially if you have 1 week hamstring or 1 week glute comparative to the other one, maybe there's some function stuff that doesn't take care of. Maybe when you're doing that, you realize, holy crap, my right really sucks and my left is all powerful. So a figure 4 one leg glute bridge against a wall is more of a function piece. So I'm going to lay hips fairly close to a wall. I'm going to swing up and put my heels so that I've got all of my joints relatively about 90 degrees. Now, I'm going to cross one leg over, or one ankle. So hence the figure 4. Now, if when doing that, this is extremely tight, I can just wiggle myself away. If I'm uber flexible, which I am not in this position, then I can do this. If I can't get my waistband and my pant down to the ground, I'm going to move away. Now that's my good side. My bad side tends to be my left. So if you feel knee stress, this might not be the one for you. I'm okay here. Now, here's what happens. Everybody does this. I always tell them not to, they do it anyway. Right now my heel is in line with the working hip. Everybody does this right before they're about to start. And they tripod themselves, because of course that's a lot easier. But put both heels in line with both hip joints. Figure out which one is tighter. Okay, whichever one's tighter is the one you start with. Here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to look at both of my pelvic points or both of my pockets. As I go up, all the way up, did this side drop, twist, or compensate in any way? If it did, you fix it. And you focus on bridging, keeping that even. My weight is in my heel. Some people mess it up and go into their toe. You keep it in your heel no matter what. You can lift the toe off the wall if you want to. That's up to you. If you have to, you can play with your foot position up the wall, but again, do not move it to the center of your body. That's compensating. It's in line with that working hip. So I'm up, okay? And then I'm going to reposition. Maybe that slides you away from the wall a bit. Okay, so everything's about 90 degrees. I cross over when I go up. This side is being forced open, this side is working. So I tend to do about 15 of these. But again, when I go up, I don't want to see twisting, dropping, anything weird happen. Okay? So that's a figure 4 one leg wall glute bridge. Now, this is horrid and terrible and not so fun, but it works extremely well. So, stability ball, right? Unstable. So I'm going to lay on my back. Now remember what I said, feet close tends to be inner hamstring, feet medial tends to be about the meat of the hamstring, and wide gives me a little more glute action. This is a glute bridge, I'm going to go a little wider. Toes, do not point them down. You're going to Charlie horse your calves, toes point up. Now, on an unstable object, and I could put this against the wall if I'm incapable of doing this. Again, flat back, can I bridge all the way up and really squeeze this? I'm going to feel a lot of hamstring, a lot of glute. Now, I'm just going to simply keep my hips always moving, but I'm going to peak, contract, or really squeeze at the top, up and down, okay? These are terrible. If your hamstrings don't feel like they're going to cramp when you're doing this, you're probably not doing it right. Squeeze. Now don't kick the leg straight. It stays bent about 90 degrees the whole time. Okay. So that's just a wide stance, stability ball, glute bridge. Your hamstrings are going to hate you for about a week for doing that. When should you put glute bridges in your workout? They shouldn't replace squats. They shouldn't replace deadlifts. They shouldn't replace step-ups, swings. They shouldn't replace any of that stuff. They should be added to that stuff. Preferably, actually, I like to do my low-load glute stuff on a different day than I do my high-load glute stuff. So I might do all my Romanian deadlifts, trap bar deadlifts, squats, whatever. All the high-load barbell free weight type stuff on one day, and then a few 4 days later when I can walk normal and do my low-load glute stuff. So, with this bridge variation, this is a burnout. Now, burnout you can use a couple different ways. You could pre-exhaust the glutes and get a lot of blood flow in the glutes before you go and do your heavy stuff. That might make them a bit weaker, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to feel your glutes a lot more if you do this before you go and do a squat. I wouldn't do 10 sets of it. I would prefer to do 3 or 4 sets of this glute burnout. It's more or less a mechanical drop set. I would prefer to do it at the end of my workout and then hopefully waddle myself out the door. So I tend to do a lot of this. I tend to torture people a lot with this one. It always works. I've never seen any problems with it. So you're going to take your feet elevated. Not that they have to be. If you can't handle that, your feet can be on the floor. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go feet close together, feet medium, and then feet wide. This is 37 glute bridges. When my feet are close, and here's probably the most important thing, when my feet are close, I'm intentionally crushing the hell out of my glutes. When I do my feet medium and I do my 12 reps, it's just up and down really fast. I am not intentional. I'm just trying to survive, trying to get through this terrible lactic acid burning, because when you go to do the 15, you're going to flip back to intentional. Okay, so why? Those 15, if you want glutes, you got to squeeze them. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. Again, I got to figure out, should I be really close? When I do that glute bridge, I feel lower back and hamstring. I don't really feel my glute. So I'm going to move back and see if that changes things. Again, I got a neutral spine. Bang, there we go. I feel glutes, we're good. I'm in good space. So what did I say? The 10 reps. Don't point your toes down, point your feet up. 10 reps, squeeze. On purpose. Every single terrible rep of these. 5, 6, 7. If you're not sure if you're squeezing it, just grab your butt. Be the weirdo in the gym doing that. Right away, do not rest. Go medium, quick. 2, 3, 4. Burn it out. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I move myself away. I'm going to go close. Extra wide. Squeeze. Terrible squeezing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. Again, I got a flat pelvis, so I'm not using my lower back. If this doesn't burn, you just don't have glutes. Some people get to here and they're like, oh, it's so terrible, you just ruin your entire set. Okay? Don't stop, suck it up. And then squeeze the last one, okay? Not a bad idea, just kind of chill out here. Stretch your glute. Stretch your glute. Okay, so, glute bridges. Number 1, you shouldn't feel your lower back. If you do, your pelvis tucking in a weird way, flatten your lower back to the ground, or tighten your abs before you bridge, okay? If you tend to feel one glute more than the other, play around with your foot stance. Maybe it doesn't have to be even to make sense. The last thing, try all the different variations, and there's probably 50 different glute bridge variations that I use. The main thing about that is you can elevate your shoulders, you can elevate your feet, you can do one-legged. So like on the wall version, for example, that's my feet elevated and one leg, right? So there are 1,000 different ways to do glute bridges. My point is do a lot of them. If you end up with any kind of weird pains, it's probably just not the right glute bridge variation for you. Now, I've done up to 500 bodyweight glute bridges in a video, or in a day, sorry, as a workout, and it was just like I was doing other work and then I did 500 glute bridges in the middle of everything. And the next day, you know, I wasn't sore in my glutes, I was sore in my piriformis in a bad way. And if you've ever had that kind of pain, it's not a good pain. So there is overdoing it as well, okay? I think for the most part, pick one variation or 2 variations at most, do 3 or 4 sets and call it a day. But my point is, make a glute bridge absolutely intentional with every single rep that you're doing, otherwise you're wasting your time. Don't just flail yourself in the air. And then, again, if it doesn't work or you feel your lower back, change your foot position. Closer, further away, wider apart, more narrow, toes up, toes down. Most of the time, everything's in the heels. Okay, any questions, post them below.